Hi, I'm Keith Robert Gordon, broker for Altru Realty. This is going to be a really cool video series because I'm going to talk about why you should hire a top agent to represent you as opposed to selling for sale by owner or maybe flat fee MLS, which means you're still self-represented, but you're in the MLS. So let's get busy and talk about why you should consider hiring a broker like myself. So part of the advantage of having somebody represent you is you get an advisor, you get a consultant to talk to you day in, day out to advise you about the list price, any price change if you're overpriced. The advice I give sellers is invaluable. I work hard for my sellers. I give them the accurate advice every single time, and I don't tell them what they want to hear. I tell you what you need to know. If we're ever faced with a situation where we're overpriced in the market, we've been out there for 18 days and nothing's happened, I'm going to give you the advice you need to find that buyer. You don't want to get behind the curve. If the market's in a falling market or a rising market, you need the right advice every single time. I have a strategy and an answer for literally everything we're going to see when we're negotiating a real estate transaction. Now let's keep going down this road of advice and knowledge and experience. I've closed over 4,500 sell-side transactions worth over $1.5 billion, been broker for 37 years. I'm in situations all the time that require every bit of my skill. So how is it possible that a self-represented seller or a for sale by owner that hasn't seen anything but maybe 5 transactions in their lifetime get the right answer when things get a little difficult? Just last week, we had a $1.6 million home that had 3 offers going on at the same time. Everyone was different. Things got really crazy. We had one person making a cash offer. One's this, one's higher than the other one. One gives us an appraisal gap. There was all kinds of decisions to be made. If it wasn't for my head negotiator and my sales skill, there's no way we would have come to the right conclusion like we did. We did it flawlessly. We're under contract with the right buyer. I can give you another example. We had a transaction where a seller came to me, it was a self-represented seller, switched over to have me represent them. They were willing to do a deal at $190,000. I told my seller, I said, seller, let's be patient here. I think we're going to get the $240,000 list price. We sure did. It took us another 10 days, but the house was very popular, and I thought we were going to get the number, and we did. That's the advantage I bring all my sellers. As well, real estate concepts are really important. We get asked questions all the time from sellers about contracts and can I breach out the buyer and things like that. What is equitable interest? What does it mean, the 4 corners of the contract? There's a lot of legal maneuvers going on in that real estate contract. You need a real pro. We know everything about the FAR bar as is contract, as well as all the other contracts that we see in the state of Florida. One of the biggest risks that a seller gets into is accepting a bad buyer. When you're self-represented, it's kind of hard to vet out the buyers like we do. We've seen so many buyers that we know how to vet those buyers out and keep you away from taking a bad deal. If you are self-represented and you do take a bad buyer, it can cost you a lot of money. It can cost you $4,000 or $5,000, $6,000 because they might keep you out of the MLS for 30 days or maybe longer. They may even ask for an extension of the loan approval period or things like that. And I've seen self-represented sellers give extension after extension and then lose the buyer. We never do that. We do the opposite. If you want an extension of contract, it's going to cost you some escrow. As we transact real estate, sometimes it gets difficult. Sometimes buyers start to move around a little bit and ask for an extension of close date or an extension of the loan approval period. We might give them an extension, but we also might ask them for more escrow and non-refundable escrow. So when they're asking us for things like, give me more time, we're going to say to them, give me more money. There's also more risk with a contract. Another risk with the contract is some buyer's agents make offers with a 30-day loan approval period. They also have a close date at 30 days. That means their escrow will never be at risk. It's actually a free option on your property, and I've seen it quite a bit with self-represented sellers. It's the worst contract in the world for a seller. Another risk for a seller is too low of escrow. Escrow is the only protection a seller has from buyer breach. So if a buyer is in breach and we do have to breach out a buyer, we need to make sure we have enough escrow in place to protect your risk. Another major area of risk to a seller is the inspection report. So when the inspection report comes out, even though it's an as-is contract, it's as-is, right to inspect, right to cancel, we want to keep that buyer in the deal. The question is, what do they want? What can we do to mitigate what they want and keep them still in the deal? That is our expertise, and that's probably one of the biggest reasons to hire a pro. So another big concern that I always have when I represent a seller is appraised value. Now, this is an art. This is a very difficult process. Now, what we're going to do every single time when I represent a seller is I'm going to try to figure out the difference between where I sell the house and where the appraised value is going to come in. Now, while it's a guess, I'm very good at getting buyers to agree to accept some of that risk. We call it appraisal gap transfer. We call it appraisal risk management. But the bottom line is you don't want a short appraisal because that can cost you a lot of money. Now, a lot of self-represented sellers or for sale by owners will go, oh, I don't want to pay anybody a commission to represent me. Really? Are you serious? You want somebody to represent you because if you have an appraisal shortfall gap, it can cost you $10,000 in a blink of an eye. The number one reason why you don't want to self-represent or be a buy owner is because when you're talking to buyer's agents out there, which predominantly that's what's going to happen, I have a theory. It's called you're it. Your it means that everything you say they hear. You don't have a choice. You can't buffer between you and them. Everything you say can and will be used against you during the negotiating process. The second reason why you should consider not representing yourself is that you have nobody to listen to what the other side is saying and analyze what they're doing. So when you self-represent or a buy owner, you're like, bam, 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 one-on-one, talking back and forth and trying to make a deal happen. When I represent a seller, I'm not doing that. What I'm doing is I'm literally just listening to what they're doing. So what do I mean by I'm just listening to what they're doing? So the art of negotiating, and the reason why you don't necessarily want to do it yourself is because when I get out there with a new listing, what I'm looking for is its popularity with buyers. I'm not looking for that one person that quickly makes an offer or the second one or the third one. I'm not convinced yet of value. What do I mean by that? I'm never convinced of value until I've seen many offers and I've gone through a process of vetting them all, and it's a very difficult process to do if you're not a pro. And when it comes down to writing an ad and making sure you're saying the right things to the marketplace, you don't want to say things like selling my house as is or I'm selling my house furnished. Those two sentences can cost you a lot of money. You don't say either in an MLS ad for many reasons. So when it comes down to communicating the right information to buyers and buyers agents, whether it be seller disclosure information, just any information, even your motivation, that's where a professional comes in. So in essence, when you're represented by a professional, it's the quiet things we do for you that are so valuable. We don't over-negotiate. We actually do it the other way around. We kind of under-negotiate with buyer's agents. Why? Because we want them to make the move. We want them to increase their offers. We don't want to tell them anything about your intentions, but we're willing to do. What we're really looking for is to get 2 or 3 or 4 buyers bidding for your property at one time, just like that $1.6 million listing. It took us a while to get in that position, but we did it. I can give you another really good example about hard negotiating skills. One of my friends selling a house in the Keys, we were listed for $1.6 million, same kind of price as the other one. We raised the price $100,000 to $1.7 million because we thought we could. We had offers at 1.55, 1.6, 1.65. We ended up with 1.73. Now, it took us about 60 days to get it under contract, but we made a whole lot more money. So what I'm looking for when I represent a seller is I'm looking for what I call popularity. What is popularity? Well, popularity tells me everything about how much money I'm going to get for that home. So if I think a listing is popular with the buyers, I know to be even more patient. Why? Because then I'm going to get the seller more money every single time. Let's talk more about why you should consider being represented by a pro. Let's go back to this popularity thing. It's everything to me. So when I see a self-represented seller sell a home, often they negotiate too quickly with the buyer's agent and they end up meeting them in the middle and doing a deal far under what the house is really worth. The difference between the way I look at value and a homeowner or maybe another realtor looks at value is this. I never presume I know value. I go into a deal hopefully with a very accurate list price, which I'll talk about in a second. But what I'm doing for sellers is I'm going to find out and explore and investigate exactly what I can get for the home. So let's talk about the list price for a second. The way I look at a list price is not the way other people do. A lot of people look at a list price as just a place to pivot off of, to meet an offerer in the middle and do a deal. I would never do that. Matter of fact, a list price to me is just a placeholder to take the temperature of buyers to see how popular my home is going to be. So why do I call a list price a placeholder? Because it doesn't mean anything to me in the sense of value. Just because somebody offers that full list price, that doesn't mean it's value. Value might be much higher. So you have to employ a lot of patience to figure out what the real value is. That's the next biggest point about a self-represented seller. A self-represented seller doesn't have a lot of patience. I haven't really seen many that really do. And the reason, I'm not talking badly about self-represented sellers or for-sale owners, but the art of negotiating is actually not really caring about putting your house under contract. I don't really care about putting it under contract very fast. Matter of fact, I take great pleasure in not putting a house under contract for maybe 12 days, could be 18 days, until I've made sure I found the highest buyer. So let's go to the next reason why you should consider hiring me. I have no fear. I don't have a fear of losing a buyer ever. And the reason is buyers never walk away from a transaction. Conversely, self-represented sellers are always fearful that once somebody makes an offer, they have to do something. They fear that if they don't do something like a counteroffer or do something by a certain time frame, that the buyer's going to go away. That's the biggest reason not to self-represent. So why is it that I have no fear when I represent a seller? And the reason is because here's the theory, and it works every time. Buyers are like zebra. They just keep coming and coming and coming. So if you're popular and you're priced right, we get to actually pick which buyer we want. But the good thing is, while I'm deciding which buyer is the best buyer for you, the price just keeps going higher and higher. There's another significant reason not to self-represent, and it's called the pushy buyer's agent. Buyer's agents are about as pushy as you're ever going to get. They make a living by putting homes under contract fast. So they're going to put every bit of pressure on you as they can to get you to make a quick decision so that they can lock you up, earn a commission, and hopefully get a good deal for their buyer. So in essence, what a professional negotiator does for a seller is they stand between that buyer's agent and your money to make sure that the buyer's agent's not going to pressure you into making a deal. Conversely, here's how I do it. I don't care what they do. I don't care about their time to accept deadline at 5 p.m. tomorrow, or the fact that they want to counter or they're being aggressive with me. The more aggressive they are with me, the more I don't like doing business with them. Why? Because then during the inspection period, they're going to be just as aggressive trying to negotiate for the buyer, and that's going to hurt my seller. So we're talking about aggressive buyer's agents. When you hire a professional broker agent to represent you, I'm vetting two people. I'm vetting the buyer and I'm vetting the buyer's agent. I'm vetting the buyer for their cash, or if they're getting financing, I'm going to call their lender and do a bunch of things, ask them some questions about who the buyer is. But I'm going to make sure that buyer is good. And next, I'm going to talk about the buyer's agent. So just like vetting a buyer, you got to vet the buyer's agent. They're so important to vet because they're my partner in closing a transaction. Not partner like, hey, let's make a deal to make a commission. No way. I don't care about commissions that way. I work for sellers with single agency, which means I battle only for their best interest using fiduciary duty. But what I'm saying to you is, I want a buyer's agent that's going to be respectful and polite, not just to me, but to you and your money. There's so many nuances of a contract. So when we negotiate a contract, we're looking at many things: appraisal shortfall gap insurance. We're looking at 2 escrow deposits, not 1. We're also looking for a 20-day loan approval, not 30, because we want their escrow to be non-refundable after day 21. So once you get into a contract, you got to manage the timelines. We have escrow deposit due, number 1, escrow deposit 2. We have the loan approval deadline. And the buyer and the buyer's agents are maneuvering in between there. So our job is to make sure that their escrows come in, they keep to the timelines, and if they don't, we'll advise you what you can do if you want to breach them out. Selling real estate is complicated. There's so many moving parts, so much communications going on. You need to be on top of it, professional, and never miss a thing. If you list your home with me and my team, we'll never miss a timeline. We'll protect your interest from beginning to end. We do it every day. We do it all weekend. We're reliable, we're on time, and we are experts. The last part is the closing. We're not going to leave you by yourself. We're going to be there every step of the way. We're going to review that Altru closing statement, American Land Title Association closing statement if it's a financing deal, if it's a cash deal, the HUD statement. Review it with you to make sure you fully understand what's going on, and we'll make sure there's no mistakes in that statement, and if there are, we'll get it corrected for you. Thanks for listening to this video, and we hope to get your home listed with Altru Realty, and we'll represent you well. Thanks for listening. My name is Keith Robert Gordon.